My name is Marin Ellington, 25 years old. I've repeated that sentence to myself more times than I can count, like a grounding spell, a reminder that I exist outside of my family's long, distorted shadow. Growing up, that shadow had a name, Portia, my older sister, my parents' pride, their bright, spotless trophy child who could do no wrong even when she absolutely did. Portia 30 and radiating the kind of confidence only lifelong favoritism can manufacture, has always had what I sometimes called main character energy. Not in a charming way, in the way that meant everyone else was an NPC existing solely to orbit her. And for most of my childhood, I accepted that without protest. Conflict wasn't my nature. Back then, silence felt like safety. But the truth is that silence becomes a cage when you grow up in a family that never saw you as anything but the other kid. I spent my entire childhood being compared to Portia. Every teacher, every coach, even the principal, everyone reacted the same way whenever they connected us. Your sister's really. She's so talented. You're different. Different. Average. Forgettable. Words that slowly carve themselves into me. My parents never hid their disappointment. Portia got trophies. I got lectures. Portia earned praise. I earned criticism. Portia was pampered. I was the afterthought. If Portia was a masterpiece, then I was the scribble in the margins. And the irony, those scribbles, my doodles, my little sketches, were the only thing that ever made me feel like I had something of my own. Mom called it scribbling with a roll of her eyes. Once she even tore my sketchbook in half because I should be studying like Portia. I still remember the tearing sound. Paper ripping. Something inside me ripping too. By the time I turned 13, I understood something vital. I could never win their love in the way Portia did. Worse, I didn't want to. Not anymore. So I withdrew. Not dramatically, quietly, steadily. I hid in my room with my pencils and notebooks. I stopped trying to impress anyone. I taught myself how to live without being seen. And then Portia left for college and everything shifted. She changed. She still excelled, sure, but she stopped picking up my parents' calls, came home, less spent money recklessly, and suddenly my parents realized they had poured their entire identity into a child who didn't want them. The panic set in, the loneliness, and then like clockwork, they turned to me. For the first time, they wanted to be close. They wanted to fix things, to bond, to play happy family. But their sudden affection felt suffocating. I'd spent years training myself not to need them, not to hope for more. I wasn't going to unlearn that because Portia got bored with them. Their attention turned into resentment. Resentment turned into shouting. Shouting turned into the kind of emotional exhaustion that made my chest tight every time I walked in the door. I survived high school by disconnecting almost mechanically. When I left for college, I was free. Animation saved me. The scribbling they hated became my degree, then my passion, then my job. I got hired right after graduation. I thrived. I built a life that belonged to me. I found real love too. Edward, my fiancé, a warm, steady man who never makes me feel small. We share a home, a dog named Emma, friends, a social circle that sees me, actually sees me. And for 3 years, I kept my distance from my family. I didn't need them. I didn't miss them. Then came the phone call. My Aunt Rachel, one of the few family members who had ever defended me, told me my mother had been hospitalized. Not just sick, very sick. A diagnosis that wasn't straightforward. A recovery that wasn't guaranteed. A week had passed before I was notified. A week. That told me everything I needed to know about how deeply disconnected I'd become. Aunt Rachel said my mother was crying for me in the hospital, saying she regretted everything that she feared she'd die, carrying the guilt of being a terrible mother. Maybe it should have meant something. Maybe it did. But my first reaction was suspicion. Because crying about guilt is not the same as caring about the person you hurt. Still, some part of me, the part that used to stare at sketchbook pages hoping for a kind word, didn't want to regret ignoring her. Edward encouraged me gently. My aunt urged me. Eventually, I agreed to meet my mother. The reunion was emotional. Tears, apologies, remorse that felt heavy but also strangely rehearsed. She apologized for how she treated me growing up, but every time I tried to steer the conversation away, she insisted on holding my hand, crying more, almost performing the apology rather than feeling it. My father, of course, barely spoke, too proud to admit fault. too proud to acknowledge years of emotional damage. He pretended the past was over, like flipping a switch should reset everything. Portia was noticeably absent. Later, I learned my mother had banned her from being there, supposedly fearing Portia would cause problems. The irony was almost laughable, and for a short moment, I wanted to believe reconciliation was possible. But reality is never that kind. As wedding planning consumed my schedule work, deadlines, vendors, fitting appointments, guest lists, I barely had time to breathe, let alone chat with my mother. My parents took offense. My father was furious I hadn't given him the traditional role of walking me down the aisle. He called me voice tight with anger, accusing me of humiliating him. I told him plainly, nothing is normal between us. He didn't like that, but he went quiet. It was the first boundary I'd ever set with him, and it held. I sent out wedding invitations, including one to Portia. She replied simply, I will be attending. No apology, no warmth, just entitlement in text message form. Still, I let it go. I had bigger things to focus on: my wedding, my future, my new family. But peace never lasts long in a family like mine. And in ways I couldn't foresee, the past I had spent years distancing myself from was already moving quietly, strategically, straight toward my wedding day. I just didn't know it yet. A week after the small, strained reunion with my parents, life slipped back into its blur of work deadlines and wedding logistics. I barely had a moment to breathe, much less sit in quiet reflection about what reconnecting with my mother truly meant. But the emotional undertow was still there, slow dragging, unsettling. Every time my phone buzzed, I wondered if it was her. Every time I saw my father's name flash on the screen, a familiar tightness wrapped around my ribs. I kept my distance without fully withdrawing. It felt like standing on a rope bridge, connected but still gripping the sides, wary of every sway. My mother tried in her way. She sent messages about her health, about gratitude, about wanting to make up for lost years. Her words were earnest, but her actions were still laced with the old reflexes, subtle guilt trips, emotional appeals, the quiet expectation that I would shift my life around her healing. My father, on the other hand, made no such attempts. He maintained the same rigid posture he always had, too proud to apologize, too self-righteous to reflect. He didn't seek reconciliation. He simply assumed it had happened, that we were back to normal. He called me 2 weeks after I first saw my mother and demanded to know why he wasn't walking me down the aisle. Because things aren't normal, I said, keeping my tone as even as possible. You don't get to pretend the past didn't happen. You're humiliating me, he spat, after everything your mother and I have done. What exactly have you done? I cut in gently, not bitterly, just tired. And what exactly has gone back to normal? Because from my side, nothing has. He went silent, then he hung up. That more than anything confirmed what I'd suspected. They wanted reconciliation, yes, but only if it required nothing of them. No introspection, no humility, no accountability. Still, a part of me held on. A small, hopeful piece of the child I once was. But Portia remained absent from all of this. No calls, no texts, no "I'm glad you and Mom are talking again." Nothing. Which should have alarmed me, because Portia doesn't stay quiet unless she's planning something. But at the time, I thought her silence was a blessing, a sign she didn't care enough to cause problems. I didn't yet realize silence was the problem. A few days later, I finally visited my mother again. She looked older, thinner. The illness had drained color from her face, and for a moment guilt stabbed through me. She seemed fragile, breakable, and it softened me. "Marin," she whispered when I walked into the room, her voice trembling with relief. "I didn't think you'd come back so soon." "I wanted to see you," I said, even though part of me wasn't sure if that was true. "Just for a bit." She squeezed my hand tightly, almost desperately. "I know I wasn't the mother you needed. I've been thinking about everything I did wrong, every moment I chose poorly." Her voice cracked, her shoulders trembled. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a second she wasn't the woman who tore my sketchbook in half. She wasn't the woman who dismissed me, belittled me, neglected me. She was just someone who'd run out of time to pretend she was blameless. But apologies are strange things. They heal and reopen wounds all at once. "I don't want to revisit the past," I murmured. "Not right now. I just want to move forward in a way that doesn't hurt either of us." She nodded, tears spilling freely. "I'll do better, I promise. I'll protect you this time." A promise that would break days later. If she had kept that single promise, everything that followed might have been different. As wedding plans accelerated, my free time evaporated. Vendors called at odd hours. Fittings needed adjusting. Guest lists needed triple checking. I naively thought my mother would understand that I couldn't be available constantly. She did not. She left dozens of missed calls, emotional voicemails, long texts that swung between affection and guilt. You rarely visit. I thought we were rebuilding something. I feel like you're slipping away again. I wasn't slipping, I was drowning in responsibilities. But my mother had always interpreted boundaries as rejection. My father predictably took her concerns personally. He sent a long, scathing message about how disrespectful it was that I wasn't involving them in the most important event of our cultural tradition. He had never cared about tradition before, not when it concerned me, at least. Edward noticed my stress. One evening, after I ignored yet another call from my father, he placed a gentle hand on my back. "You don't have to carry all of them," he said softly. "You don't owe them every piece of yourself." I leaned against him, exhausted, grateful. "I know. I just don't want to feel guilty for choosing my happiness." "You're not choosing happiness over them," he said. "You're choosing peace over trauma." That line stuck with me. Peace over trauma. What would that even look like? When the wedding invitations went out, I braced myself for a storm. But Portia responded with a perfectly neutral message: "I will be attending." No emoji, no warmth, no passive-aggressive undertone, just a single line. A line that felt too simple to trust. My stomach tightened. I told myself it was paranoia, trauma rewiring my instincts into fear. I didn't know then that my instincts were dead right. Something was building beneath the surface quietly, strategically. Something with Portia's fingerprints all over it. Something that would hit like a wrecking ball. The week before the wedding, I had a rare, quiet morning. Hot tea, Emma curled at my feet, sunlight streaming in through the curtains when the phone rang. My cousin Lena's name blinked across the screen. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. Her breath came fast, tight, panicked. "Marin, have you heard from Portia?" I frowned. "No. Why?" Lena hesitated, voice trembling. "Then you need to sit down." I didn't sit, I froze. "What happened?" "It's about your wedding," she whispered. "And Portia's baby shower." The room around me blurred. The hair on my arms rose. "What about it?" I asked slowly. Lena swallowed hard. "She planned her baby shower on the same day as your wedding, at a venue an hour away." My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. "She's been inviting people," Lena continued, voice breaking. "Secretly, calling them one by one, telling them it's her last baby, asking them to come instead of your wedding." The air went cold, my vision stung. And then Lena said the line that cleaved the world in two: "She didn't want you to find out." Everything inside me trembled, my breath, my hands, my sense of reality. It felt like being 13 again, standing in the living room, listening to my mother tear my sketchbook, being told that Portia mattered more, always would. But I wasn't 13 anymore. And this betrayal, this wasn't childhood cruelty. This was war. For a few seconds after Lena's words hit me, I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. It was like my mind had split in two, the rational part trying to process the information slowly, carefully, and the wounded child inside me screaming, "Of course she did this. Of course she did." "Marin, are you there?" Lena's voice wavered. My throat tightened. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure." "I wish I wasn't," she whispered. "But she called me this morning. She said she wanted her real family around her for the shower. She even bragged that she picked the same day because she knew everyone would already be in town for your wedding." My stomach twisted. It wasn't an accident. She wanted an audience. She wanted to steal a spotlight that wasn't hers. She wanted to upstage me. I felt the heat rise into my face. Shame, hurt, humiliation, and a betrayal so sharp it made my chest ache. Lena hesitated before adding, "She's telling people it's her final baby, that it's more important. She's making it sound like your wedding is optional." Optional. My wedding, the day I had prayed, would finally belong to me, reduced to a backup plan. I clutched the phone so tightly my fingers trembled. Who else knows? A few cousins. Some of the older aunts. She's avoiding sending written invitations because she doesn't want word getting back to you. She's only doing calls. My heart dropped. That choice alone, keeping it off paper, told me everything. She didn't want a confrontation. She wanted a coup. "Thank you for telling me," I breathed. Marin, Lena whispered. "I'm so sorry. I don't know why she keeps doing this to you." But I did. Because Portia couldn't stand the idea of me having anything she didn't control. The moment I hung up, my hands shook uncontrollably. Emma lifted her head from the rug, sensing something wrong, and nudged my knee with her nose. I sat down beside her, stroking her fur with trembling fingers. And then the tears came. Not soft tears, not quiet tears. Violent, shaken grief and humiliation leaking out after decades of swallowing it. Edward found me minutes later. He knelt in front of me, cupping my cheeks. What happened? What's wrong? Talk to me. I tried to speak, but the words stuck. When I finally managed to choke them out, they came out in broken pieces. Portia, baby shower. Same day. She's stealing my wedding, Edward. She's actually doing it. I watched anger flash across his face. Anger not loud or explosive, but cold, protective, razor sharp. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. Every detail Lena shared. Every lingering fear from childhood. Every whisper of insecurity that Portia had ever cemented into me. Edward listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he held my hands firmly in his. She's not taking this day from you, he said with a certainty I didn't feel. Not again. Not ever. But people will choose her, I whispered, voice cracking. They always have. Always. Edward pulled me into his arms and let me sob against his shoulder. You're not that kid anymore, he murmured into my hair. You're not powerless. We're going to handle this together. I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to believe that blood didn't automatically win, that emotional history didn't outweigh respect. But the old fear clawed at me. What if the wedding is empty? What if my family leaves me again? What if I stand there waiting and the seats are all filled at her event instead? The fear was so familiar it felt like a scar reopening. When I could breathe again, Edward sat beside me and took my hand. We're going to get ahead of this, he said calmly, before it becomes a bigger mess. How? We tell the truth, he said simply. So together we drafted a message to the wedding guest list. Nothing dramatic, nothing accusatory. It took us half an hour to find the tone gracious, steady, heartbreakingly polite given the situation. It read, We've learned there's a conflict of dates with another family event happening on the same day as our wedding. We want everyone to do what feels right for them. If you plan to attend the wedding, please reconfirm with Zara so we can finalize the arrangements. We appreciate your love and support during this stressful time and look forward to celebrating with you. We debated sending it. Then I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My heart hammered as the message delivered to dozens of phones. Edward kissed my forehead. This is the right decision. But my stomach stayed knotted, because deep down I truly believed, that most people would choose Portia. That's what trauma does. It trains you to expect abandonment. Zara, my maid of honor, called later that evening. I got your message, she said. I'll handle this. You don't need to worry about anything. What do you mean? I mean, she said firmly, you're not dealing with this circus on your own. Let me sort out the numbers and the RSVPs. You stay focused on your wedding. Zara. No, she said sharply. This is your day, and I'm not letting your sister turn it into a joke. Her voice softened. Trust me, okay? I nodded even though she couldn't see it. Okay. Even with Zara's confidence, anxiety gnawed at me. The not knowing was torture. Were people responding? Were they choosing me? Or were they slipping into Portia's gravitational pull yet again? I imagined entire tables empty at the reception. I imagined walking down the aisle past rows of vacant chairs. I imagined hurts I thought I'd buried resurfacing with cruel clarity. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I called Zara again. What's the status? I asked quietly. Please just tell me. I can take it. There was a pause long enough to make my shoulders tense. Myron, she said at last, I told you I'd handle it. Stop worrying. That didn't answer anything. That made me worry more. But she refused to elaborate. So I hung up, wrapped myself in a blanket, and stared at my living room wall for hours, imagining every possible version of disaster. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time a silent second passed too long, I wondered if people were drafting excuses, choosing Portia, choosing history over fairness, choosing her over me. Edward sat with me the whole night, holding my hand, rubbing gentle circles on my back. They're going to show up, he said softly. You don't know that, I whispered. No, he kissed my shoulder, but I know you deserve it. 2 days later, my wedding morning, my heart was still a tangled mess of dread and hope. But as it turned out, all my fears, all my shaking nights, all my frantic spiraling, I was wrong. Because when I stepped out onto the venue lawn veil, flowing behind me, clutching my bouquet with trembling fingers, almost every single person I invited was there. Every cousin, every aunt, friends, extended relatives, people I hadn't expected at all. They had chosen me, not Portia, not her chaos, me. The relief hit so hard my knees nearly buckled. Zara smirked when she saw my face. Told you I handled it. But I didn't have time to process the joy before another realization hit. If almost everyone was here, then Portia was somewhere else. Somewhere plotting, somewhere angry, somewhere dangerous. And I should have known that wouldn't be the end. Because Portia has never handled being ignored. She was going to make an entrance. And when she did, she would bring hell with her. The morning of my wedding felt like stepping into a dream I'd never dared to imagine. The sun was warm, the sky impossibly clear, and for the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy against my skin. Zara was right, she had handled it. She had shielded me from the chaos, from the constant dread. And now, as I peeked out from behind the venue curtains, all I saw were smiling faces, familiar faces, faces that belonged to people who had chosen me. The relief was so overwhelming, I almost cried before even walking down the aisle. "You're glowing," Zara whispered as she adjusted the lace on my sleeve. "I'm terrified," I whispered back. "That's basically the same thing," she said dryly. Emma barked softly from her little flower collar spot near Edward's niece. Even my dog looked proud. And when the music began, when I stepped out into the walkway and saw Edward standing at the altar, eyes wide and full of love, I knew for a fleeting moment that everything was going to be okay. That maybe the universe hadn't always stacked the deck against me. The ceremony was simple, soft, emotional. The vows were a blur of trembling voices and tears. Edward's father cried harder than anyone expected. Emma sneezed at the exact moment we kissed. Everyone clapped. It was perfect, or at least it was perfect until perfection ended. After the ceremony, guests began heading toward the reception tent, murmuring happily about the food and the decor. I followed behind them, feeling lighter than air. Then I saw Zara freeze mid-step. Her eyes narrowed. Her entire posture shifted into a defensive stance I'd only ever seen once when she nearly punched a waiter who spilled wine down my graduation gown. "Marin," she whispered, her jaw tightening, "don't turn around." My heart dropped instantly. Why? Because she exhaled sharply, "Your father and Portia are here." The air vanished from my lungs. What? And then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of my father's booming voice, arguing with someone at the entrance. Before I could stop myself, I turned. There they were. My father, red-faced and furious, and Portia, visibly pregnant, hands on hips, mouth twisted into a snarl. Her hair was messy, like she'd rushed here, makeup streaked down from tears that looked less emotional and more weaponized. As if on cue, Portia locked eyes with me, and she smirked. It wasn't the smirk of someone who'd been wronged. It was the smirk of someone who believed she was still the sun, and everyone else mere planets forced to orbit her. Zara moved first. She stormed toward them and planted herself firmly between them and the reception area. "This is a private event," she snapped. "You're not on the list." My father scoffed. "She's her sister, her family. Move aside." "It's her wedding," Zara said, voice rising. "You don't get to walk in here like you're the victims." Portia stepped forward, dramatically clutching her stomach as if the weight of her unborn child gave her moral authority. "I can't believe everyone chose her over me," she wailed loudly. "Her wedding isn't even as important as my baby. This is my last child, my final pregnancy, and she couldn't show a little compassion and reschedule." A few guests turned their heads. People started whispering. My blood ran cold. My wedding was becoming an audience again, an audience to her. Zara didn't budge. "You planned your baby shower on purpose to ruin her day." Portia gasped theatrically. "That's a lie. I would never do something so petty." And then she turned to me, her expression twisting with venom. "You didn't even invite me. This is your fault." My father pressed forward too. "This is humiliating. You made us feel unwanted. You made her feel unwanted." Something inside me snapped. Edward appeared at my side, but I stepped forward before he could hold me back. "Enough," I said, my voice trembling, not with fear, but with fury. Everyone turned to look at me. Guests, cousins, friends, even the photographer froze mid-shot. "Portia," I said firmly, "you sent out secret baby shower invitations behind my back. You told people to skip my wedding. You tried to make my day about you." Portia's face twisted. "I didn't want to be alone. Everyone would have chosen you anyway." "Stop lying," I cut in sharply. "For once, please." She opened her mouth, but Aunt Rachel, quiet, calm. Aunt Rachel stepped forward from the crowd. "What Marin is saying is true," she said, her voice carrying authority. "You've manipulated this family for years, Portia. We're all tired of it." Shock rippled through the guests. Portia's eyes widened like she'd been slapped. "You're taking her side." Aunt Rachel didn't blink. "Yes." My father turned to her, angry and bewildered. "Rachel, don't get involved." "She didn't even tell Marin about the shower," Aunt Rachel snapped. "Your daughter was crying in the parking lot 10 minutes ago because no one wanted to come. That's why you're here, not because you care about this wedding." Guests began murmuring louder now. The truth was rolling through the crowd like a wave. Portia's lip quivered. "You're all horrible." And then, like a toddler denied a toy, she began to scream. Actual high-pitched shaking screams that echoed across the venue. "You ruined my life. All of you." My baby shower was supposed to be special. I deserved this day. It should have been about me. People stared in shock. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked away. But no one stepped in to defend her. I forced myself to breathe, to find words through the mess of pain and humiliation tightening inside my chest. Portia, I said quietly but firmly, get out. She froze. You're not welcome here, I continued. Not after what you did, not today, and maybe not ever again. Her face contorted. You're heartless, you're selfish, No, I interrupted. I am done. Zara and two of my friends stepped in immediately, gently but firmly guiding Portia toward the exit. She shrieked, kicked, wailed, begging Dad to help her. But my father didn't move. He didn't defend her. He simply stood there, his face suddenly drained of color. Maybe he realized how far she had fallen. Maybe he finally saw the monster he'd helped create, or maybe he was simply shocked she'd lost control in public. Either way, he stayed silent. The moment they were pushed out of sight, my body gave out. Not physically, I didn't fall, but my hands shook, my breath stuttered, and my chest tightened until tears began spilling uncontrollably. Edward wrapped his arms around me immediately. I'm sorry, I whispered against his shoulder. I'm so sorry this happened. He held me tighter. You didn't ruin anything. She did. Your family did. Not you. But the damage was done. The atmosphere in the reception tent was heavy. Guests, still supportive, began eating quickly, murmuring quiet condolences before slipping away earlier than planned. No one wanted to linger in the tension Portia left behind. By the time the tent emptied, my wedding day felt like a hollow shell, something beautiful gutted from the inside. The only thing left was Edward's hand around mine. The one good thing, I reminded myself. The only thing that mattered. At home that night, exhaustion wrapped around me like a fog. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in parts of my dress, staring at nothing. My mother had stayed silent the entire confrontation. She neither defended me nor stopped Portia. She had simply watched. And that more than Portia's outburst cut the deepest. She had been given a chance to show she'd changed, a chance to choose me, a chance to be the mother she claimed she wanted to be. She didn't take it. Edward knelt in front of me and took my hands. Listen to me, he said softly. You didn't deserve any of this. But we're going to move forward. We're going to build a life that doesn't revolve around their chaos. I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. I had been a shadow in my family for so long. I'd bent myself to survive them, to be invisible enough to avoid being hurt. But now, I wasn't invisible, I wasn't silent, and I wasn't alone. Still, Portia wasn't done. Not even close. And when the next blow came, it would arrive from someone I least expected. The day after the wedding, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only the shell to function. I didn't answer messages. I didn't return calls, not even the supportive ones from cousins who had been kind enough to attend, despite Portia's theatrics. I just lay in bed with Edward's arm draped over me and Emma curled at my feet, letting the numbness settle. We flew out for our honeymoon the next morning. I didn't post about it. I didn't update anyone. I didn't even tell my mother, who tried calling 3 times before I turned my phone on silent. Edward kept me close the entire flight, occasionally brushing my hair back or squeezing my hand gently. He didn't bombard me with questions or pep talks. He simply let me exist. And I think that's why I finally broke down halfway through the second day of the trip. We were sitting on a quiet balcony overlooking the ocean, the kind of blue that looks unreal like a Photoshop filter. The sun was setting golden light, reflecting off the waves. Maren, Edward said softly, tell me what's going on in your head. I stared at the horizon, voice trembling. She took my wedding day. Not completely, but enough. And I hate that I let her do it. I hate that I still feel small. Edward leaned forward, brushing a tear off my cheek. Feeling hurt doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. His words cracked something inside me. What if she ruins everything I whispered? Every milestone, every joy. What if this never ends? He took both my hands. It ends whenever you decide you're done. I nodded, but the fear lingered like smoke, the kind that clings to your clothes long after the fire is out. 2 days into our honeymoon, my phone lit up again and again with messages from my mother. I ignored them until one message came through while I was reaching for sunscreen. Please let me make things right. I need to talk to you. I'm ashamed. I'm so sorry. Something in me softened, and something in me hardened. So I stepped onto the balcony and called her back. Her voice shook the moment she answered. Maren. Oh, thank God. I thought you'd never speak to me again. I said we would talk after the honeymoon, I replied calmly, so I'm calling now. She exhaled shakily. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for things to happen that way. I didn't know Portia was planning that baby shower. I didn't want to upset you before the wedding. My stomach tightened. There it was, her justification wrapped in guilt, her emotional sleight of hand. You didn't tell me, I said quietly. You kept it from me. I thought people would choose your wedding, she insisted. I thought it wouldn't matter. So you gambled with my peace, I said. Again. She began crying harder. I just wanted one day, just one where things went smoothly. I didn't want to ruin the reunion we had. I didn't want you to hate me again. The guilt card. Always the guilt card. Mom, I said, voice trembling but firm. This isn't about hating you. It's about the fact that you knew something would hurt me and you stayed silent. She sobbed. I'm sick, Marin. I'm trying. Please don't give up on me. Something inside me cracked, and something inside me healed at the same time. Mom, I whispered, I need space. I need time. I need distance. I can't keep playing the daughter who absorbs all the pain. I love you, but I can't let you break me again. Her breath hitched. Please, please don't. I'll reach out when I'm ready, not before. She cried harder, begged harder, but I didn't bend. This time I ended the call first. When we returned home from the honeymoon, I had dozens of messages waiting. Most were from cousins with supportive words, some from distant family expressing sympathy, and then there were 2 long paragraphs from my father. I didn't read either. I blocked him. It felt like closing a book I'd been forced to read my whole life. But the one message I didn't expect was a text from an unknown number. Hi, it's Jake, Portia's husband. Can I talk to you? It's important. My stomach clenched. I showed the message to Edward, who shrugged. Up to you. I hesitated, then replied. Jake arrived half an hour later, looking exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Shoulders slumped like the weight of months had finally crushed him. I offered him tea. He accepted, then sat down in our living room with a heavy sigh. Marin, he began. I'm so sorry for how she treated you. I didn't know about any of it. Not until your mother told me what happened at the wedding. That surprised me. You weren't there. He chewed his lip. She told me you hadn't invited us, that she'd been excluded because you never liked her. She said the only way to feel included was to make her baby shower the same weekend. I didn't know she changed the date to the exact same day. Shock rippled through me. She lied to you too, I asked. Jake gave a small, sad laugh. That was the least of it. He looked down at his hands. We've been struggling for a long time. Her temper, her entitlement, the way she treats the kids. I tried to keep the peace, but last week she crossed a line I can't forgive. A chill ran through me. What happened? She told me, he said quietly, that if I really loved her, I'd convince my family to skip your wedding. She said she wanted everyone to choose her because she deserved the attention more. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Jake continued, voice breaking. She screamed at me when I refused. She said I was choosing you over her. She threw a bottle across the room. The kids saw. My heart tightened. Jake, that day at your wedding, he said softly, was it for you the final straw? For me, it was the last straw, too. Silence fell between us. He took a shaky breath. I've already filed for divorce. I blinked. He nodded. And I'm pursuing full custody. The air shifted. Everything felt heavier, more real. She's been telling people, Jake added bitterly, that you caused the divorce. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because dysfunction rarely changes blame. Always slides downhill to the easiest target. I'm sorry, he said again, voice raw. I know an apology doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know the truth. You deserve that. For the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. You didn't do anything wrong, I told him gently. None of this is your fault. Portia made her choices. He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. And Marin, he added, standing up to leave. You're not the reason her life is falling apart. She was always going to implode eventually. You just happened to be the one moment she couldn't control. That line echo stayed with me long after he left. The rest unraveled quickly. Portia spiraled, calling relatives, crying, screaming about betrayal. She tried to move back with my parents. They hesitantly allowed it, but only for a temporary stay. She reached out to me one last time, asking no, demanding I babysit her kids for free as repentance. I blocked her too. And then finally, everything went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet that follows a storm. The kind of quiet where debris still lies everywhere, but the wind has stopped. I sat with that silence for a long time. I looked at Edward, at Emma, at our little apartment filled with warmth, laughter, and safety. And I made my choice. I chose peace over trauma, healing over obligation, my chosen family over the one that never chose me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free.